If you've got spring fever, Lowe's has the cure. During SpringFest, make your landscape stand out with 3 free bags of Miracle-Gro 3/4 cubic foot garden soil when you buy 3. Plus, get up to 40% off select major appliances to keep clothes, food, and dishes fresh all season long. Our best lineup is here at Lowe's. Valid through 4/22 while supplies last. Selection varies by location. See Lowe's.com for details. Soil offer excludes Alaska and Hawaii.
Hi, I'm Abby, host of the new podcast, Women's Wellness with Abby Feeder. Join me each week as we dive into all things women's wellness, from fertility issues to mental health to self-love and everything in between. I'll be sharing my own journey, bringing in amazing guests, and creating a space for real talk and inspiration. If you're looking for support, insight, or just some honest conversation, you're in the right place. Listen to Women's Wellness with Abby Feeder wherever you get your podcasts.
I think as women, we always gravitate towards community, right? We are talking to each other about so much more now than, say, my mother's generation did, right? We are going there. We are rolling up the sleeves at the dinner table when we're out to dinner, talking about hormone therapy and painful sex and all the topics that used to be quite taboo. And so I do think this sense of community is really important. And when it came to writing this book, I felt like getting as many expert voices in this book as possible was going to be what served women, right? I really wanted readers to hear from doctors they might want to see, but might not be able to due to geography or cost, and really give us a sense of the community of women who are finally starting to help enact change for us in studying the female body. Let's hear from them. Let's hear about how far we've come, what we need to know, and then still how far we have yet to go.
I'm Jessica Valant. I'm a physical therapist, women's health expert, and Pilates teacher, and my goal is to help all women feel strong, safe, and secure in their bodies. In this podcast, I'll share expert advice, facts, amazing guests, stories, compassion, and hope to help you meet your body in all seasons of life.
I have such a great interview for you today. Typically, when we bring guests on, we have people who are experts in their specific field, which is fabulous. It is one of my favorite things to talk to people doing great things, helping people in the world, bringing their passion and their expertise. Today, I have someone who actually has interviewed hundreds of experts and has put all of that knowledge about women's health in one place. Today, I'm talking to Megan Rabbitt. Megan is a journalist, and you will hear the story. But when she was talking to Maria Shriver, yes, the Maria Shriver, and Maria asked her to bring us a book, a resource, like a full guide on women's health, Megan said yes. She stepped up to the plate and she did just that. We're going to talk about her new book called The New Rules of Women's Health. And you will hear some of the things that I bring up about the book in this interview. It has especially a few pieces that I have not seen in other books. I think it is going to be one of those things that becomes a resource guide for you that you keep on your bookshelf and you pull out regularly. You will use it to answer questions. You will highlight. You will take it to the doctor's office with you. Specifically, one part that really means a lot to me as a mom of a preteen is she has an entire section telling us how we can talk to young girls and talk to our daughters about their bodies to help empower them, to set them up, set them on a better path than we had, 30, 40, 50 years ago. It is such an invitation to step into really feeling empowered in our bodies and advocating for ourselves. So let me tell you a little bit about Megan. Megan Rabbitt is an award-winning journalist and author of The New Rules of Women's Health, your guide to thriving at every age. She specializes in writing about women's health and wellness, and her work has appeared in many national publications, including Women's Health, Oprah Daily, Prevention, Maria Shriver's Sunday Paper, and more. She's known for translating complex medical medical and scientific topics into clear, actionable information, and for telling stories that help readers better understand their bodies, their health, and themselves. This is a conversation and ultimately a book that brings you stories from women around the world, as well as that knowledge from experts all in one place. I absolutely love this conversation, and I am so excited to bring it to you today. Here we are with our interview with Megan Rabbitt. Megan, thank you so much for being here today. We are so excited to talk with you.
Thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
The audience knows a little bit about you. I read your bio, the official bio at the beginning, but I would love to hear just from your own words. Tell us like your story. Tell us where you are in the world, why you're here, and why this message is so important to you.
Well, I am here in Boulder, Colorado.
Wait, real quick. You're in Boulder?
Yeah.
I'm in Denver.
Why are we not in person right now, Jessica?
I'm actually up near Genesee. We're up like towards the mountains a little bit. But
Totally. Oh, we're neighbors.
I didn't know. When I saw your number, I'm like, oh, she's not in Colorado. Okay,
Yes.
Sorry, everyone, but that was really exciting for me.
I do have a New York City number because I did start my career. I am a New Yorker, born and raised on the East End of Long Island. And then I started my journalism career in New York City. So yeah, I went to college. I fell in love with journalism. And interestingly enough, I always wanted to be a doctor when I was a young kid. And then I found writing and I took a bunch of science classes and was like, I think I'm going to be more of an English major. So it's fun to me that I found myself in health journalism pretty early on in my career. And yeah, I'm here talking to you today because I had a book come out called The New Rules of Women's Health, and it really is a women's lifespan book. You know, what I tried to do is I interviewed over 132 all-female clinicians and researchers and scientists for this book to really bring women what we most need to know about our bodies and our health to best care for ourselves and to advocate for ourselves.
That's amazing. And you all, I have it right here. We were just talking about it before. We're going to talk all about this book today, and I will have the links underneath for you to go get your own copy. Really, when I look through this, I think of it as a resource guide. I mean, it is something that will stay up on my shelf, that will be highlighted and dog-eared for myself. And then I was also telling Megan beforehand, for my 12-year-old daughter, I would love to know, like you said, you were kind of in journalism and you were in the women's health space. What really kind of told you that we needed a resource guide and a book like this?
Yeah, I love that you call it a resource guide because that is what I aim to do, right? It's a 675-page book, so it feels big, but it really is not meant to read in, cover to cover in one sitting, right? It's meant to be on your shelf, on your coffee table, where you can pick it up based on what's happening for you. The book has a fun origin story. So I am lucky enough to work for Maria Shriver. I am an editor on her weekly digital news magazine called The Sunday Paper. And about a year into working for her, I was out in LA. We were having a salad over lunch. We were eating salads, talking about content. And she said, Megan, we need a women's health book. We have for years had Our Bodies Ourselves, which is an incredible women's health book. But really what we know now, and as Maria and I started talking about Our Bodies Ourselves, and I've got one on my shelf, it really covers what we now refer to as bikini medicine. It covers our breast health, our gynecologic health, sexual health. It is an incredible resource, right? But thankfully, we know more now because we are finally starting to do the women's health research that we've sorely been lacking. Because we know more about women's hearts and brains and our immune system, Maria and I, as we talked about this, was like, yeah, we need a new modern guide to really help give women the education we've been missing about our bodies so that we really can optimally care for ourselves. And so that was what I got up to with this book. It was a 3-year process. So countless interviews, again, interviewing more than 100 experts. I hired independent fact checkers to help me make sure I got everything right, poured over research to really, Maria Shriver asked me to write a manifesto. And so that's what I aim to do.
Yeah. Well, I think you did it. So good job. And I'm guessing when Maria Shriver asks you to do something, you're going to do your best to do that.
You say, okay, Maria, I'm on it,
And it is really evident to me, like, again, going through this book, but also going through your Instagram, it is obvious to me that that idea of community and bringing experts to the table is really important to you and the work that you do. And I value that so much. And I love that you are lifting other voices. And like you said, you brought in all women experts. Was that a goal of yours from the beginning? Is that something you've kind of discovered as you've been in the space, how important it is to create that table? How has that kind of come about?
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful question because I think as women, we always gravitate towards community, right? And I think luckily now, I just turned 47, and I noticed that among women of my age, we are talking to each other about so much more now than, say, my mother's generation did, right? We are going there. We are rolling up the sleeves at the dinner table when we're out to dinner, talking about hormone therapy and painful sex and all the topics that used to be quite taboo. And so I do think this sense of community is really important. And when it came to writing this book, I felt like getting as many expert voices in this book as possible was going to be what served women, right? Because we have so many, countless wonderful women's health books, mostly written by one expert in the topic who's got a one view of, and I feel like that's great. But what I really wanted readers to hear from doctors they might want to see, but might not be able to due to geography or cost, and really give us a sense of the community of women who are finally starting to help enact change for us in studying the female body. Let's hear from them. Let's hear about how far we've come, what we need to know, and then still how far we have yet to go.
Yeah. And I appreciate that so much being in healthcare, a healthcare provider for decades now. And we're in a interesting, can be a hard time. Like you said, it's a really good time with all the information coming out. It can also be a little bit of a hard time because I find there's a lot of doubt as well around doctors. There's higher doubt than I've seen before for medical professionals, scientists, all of that. And we should be asking questions 100%. I also feel like there are so many good voices out there that, like you said, they aren't online. They don't have a platform, but they're the ones that we go see. I have a great oncologist who has been so amazing and helpful to me. There are some really good doctors out there just doing really good, important work in their offices day after day, seeing patients. And I feel like that is what this kind of can be, is almost that idea of, right, there are some trusted sources out there. And like you said, if I can't get to them, maybe I can bring them to me here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really an important point as well, which is that, might not see everybody on Instagram, or whatever your social media platform is. And what's more is you might see a lot of information that maybe makes you raise an eyebrow, maybe makes you go, "Huh, should I trust this information?" We are in an era where we are bombarded with information and misinformation, which makes it really crucial for us to have a new sense of taking ownership of our health, for understanding like the basics of what we need to do to vet information to make sure we're following the information that's going to do right things by us. But again, it points to no matter who you're listening to, like we really all need a great healthcare team to help us navigate all the things that can come up in midlife and beyond.
Yes. And that leads me, you have a really great and interesting portion of the book. Like you said, it's definitely a resource book, you guys. You can just pick it up, read a little bit at a time, highlight it. And I just thought this was fascinating because I haven't seen it in any books yet. It's not talked about enough. And that's the piece of how we can actually use AI to our advantage and how to kind of read or understand research studies when that's not your expertise. And that does come up a lot because we are going online looking for information, but it feels impossible sometimes. Even for me, someone who can read research studies, I have to dig and dig to find what I feel like is the truth. So can you talk through that a little bit, or maybe just give a couple high-level tips for people who are out there thinking, yeah, how do I start to dig through that information digitally right now?
Yeah, what a great question. And it is why I dedicated an entire chapter to
Mhm.
navigating our health in this ever changing digital world in which we live, right? I think when it comes to AI, a lot of us are turning to ChatGPT or another one of the large language models or to LLMs to understand, like, we're using it like we used to use Google, right? Which isn't necessarily bad, but it is important to understand that these AI models are biased because they have learned from the information we've had, right? And so they are biased against women oftentimes and against women of color, minorities in large. So I think that's really important to just keep in mind, right? That the AI result you might be getting when you're asking your AI model what you need to know might be skewed towards the male data. So that's important. I think also when it comes to studies, gosh, research studies are hard to decipher. They can be really dense. They can be like, how do you know what you're looking at? It's important to know, and I outline in my book the different types of studies there are, because I think, we can glean different information. Our doctors glean different information from reviews, say, or they look at things like study size, right? If this is a study of animals or is it a study of humans? And so there are different things to kind of clue into. But I think what it also comes down to is once we have a sense of like, okay, I've got this basic sense, whether or not the results are applicable to us is a really personalized decision. And it really does point to us needing, again, to create this team. Like I call it a healthcare posse. You want your team, your posse of people who you can then go to and say, I read this study about, fill in the blank, lowering my cholesterol. Do you think this will work for me? And you can then unpack the study and how you might fit into the results. And so I think that's really important as well. And I think, finally on that, I really aimed to try to help give readers in my book the tools they need to vet health information. So I'm a health journalist. This comes naturally to me because I've been honing this. I know how to vet sources. I look at their background. I look to see if there's any maybe ulterior motives there. Are you telling me that this supplement is going to save my life and you just so happen to be selling this supplement? Not saying that supplement isn't still good for me. It's just something that's going to raise a little flag for me and say, oh, okay, I might want to cross-check that information. I do something that's called lateral reading a lot, which I think everybody can do, which is let's say you see a new study or a new result saying like coffee lowers cholesterol. I'm totally making this up.
That's okay, but that'd be a great study because I love coffee. So any benefits would be great.
So what I would do is then open up like 10 different tabs on my computer or my phone and search that, search like coffee's impact on cholesterol. And then you're going to try to see what other sources say. Doctors call this a medical consensus, right? What's the consensus? What do other sources like the Cleveland Clinic or the Mayo Clinic or what do these other big health institutes or other doctors say to corroborate this advice or not? And if you don't see a lot of like, all signs point towards coffee does have this impact, then again, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. It's just really important to keep in mind.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think what I hear you saying too is gather your information, and we'll go into kind of advocacy because I know that's a really big, important kind of value for you in the book as well, is teaching women to be advocates for themselves. And I think sometimes that's misconstrued as, well, I need to make all the decisions myself. Like I need to do all the research so that I make a decision for myself. I don't think of it that way. I think of it as, okay, do I know my body and how it reacts? Am I able to speak up for myself and use my voice in a doctor's office? And then can I gather all of that information and, like you said, then bring it to someone that I trust who will have a full conversation with me and give me my options and then allow me to be a part of the decision-making process. I think that's a really different kind of system as opposed to, I'm going to make the decision completely by myself, or, the doctor is going to make their decision completely by themselves.
Absolutely. That is something I heard time and time again from the doctors I interviewed for my book and all healthcare practitioners really, is that shared decision-making is really the goal, right? We can help our doctors by bringing information to them. So by saying, I read this new study, what do you think about it for me? Or by doing even the basics, like knowing your family health history. Really outlining your personal health history, being honest about things like the fact that you have a history of smoking, even though you've quit. They need to know how many years you did, say, what your diet is really like. I think sometimes a lot of us who are overachieving women, I know I fall into this category. I'm a little bit of a hard driver and a little type A. I think sometimes I try to get the gold star from my doctor. Like, look at me, look at how good my body is, but really sometimes that can make us leave out things that can really help them help us and come to that shared decision that's going to really optimize our health. And so I think, I think the more we can come to our doctors and help give them the information that's going to optimally help them,
Yeah.
really help us chart a healthy way forward, that is the name of the game.
Yep. And with that, are there any other kind of tips or pieces you have found with advocacy that you recommend for women who are even just starting this process? And even let's say, I mean, because I'm 48, so I'm right there in that kind of middle perimenopausal timeline. But even women who are in their 20s starting out, like what are some basic things they can do in that world of advocacy for themselves?
Yeah, I think on a macro level, we all have to understand that we must own our health. Gone are the days where we're going to see the same doctor for like 20 years who's going to know our health inside and out. Like it used to be like the doctor who delivered your babies was going to be the doctor who helped you through menopause. That's typically not how it goes anymore. And
Yeah.
so, as such, we need to say, okay, from the get go, how am I going to own my health? Create the right healthcare posse for me, hire the right doctors, fire the doctors who aren't necessarily listening or valuing that shared decision making we just talked about. And then I think really understanding that as women, unfortunately, but also we can look at it as a good thing, like when we're it's an empowering point. We have to be proactive in coming to our doctors with what we want to talk to them
Yeah.
about. We have to educate ourselves and understand what we need to know about given our age and symptoms. And then we often have to be the ones to bring that up. So, a specific example of this, and I think something a lot of women don't know, was a big surprise to me, even as a health journalist, is that our gynecologic health history should be a part of our future cardiology exams. So, the history of pregnancy complications like preeclampsia or gestational diabetes, even if these conditions clear up after giving birth, there's something you should bring up because it might point to your need for an earlier heart health screening. Hot flashes during the menopause transition. What we now know is that hot flashes are a whole body inflammatory response that may impact our heart. So if you had hot flashes and you got them treated and you were like, no big deal, maybe, but it's something that we need to proactively bring up to our
Yeah.
primary care physician to see if actually maybe a preventive cardiology visit would be really great for us in our 50s instead of putting that off to our 60s. So these are just ways that I think, for women in their 20s, they can take charge by saying like, let's have a great conversation about birth control right now. I want to know what my options are, or I read about my options in this book.
Yeah.
Here's what's most appealing to me. What do you think based on my pregnancy or family planning goals? In our these, we can be thinking about, even in that time where we're often, if we're moms really busy taking care of kids or just hard charging on the work front, we still need to keep things in mind, right? What we now know is that conditions like Alzheimer's, the seeds are planted for that in our 30s and our 40s. So how can we be proactive about
Yep. And what are your thoughts, or I would love to hear it from you, and then also any of the experts that you interviewed for the book? Thoughts on, like, this is all, in general, we think of this as in-person visits, like going out, feet to the pavement, finding doctors. A lot of people, like you said, don't have that option for various accessibility reasons. Did conversations come up around all of the options we have now for virtual meetings with doctors or places like MIDI Health or, Alloy, those kind of places?
Yeah, I really focused. I didn't cover that so much. I did cover telehealth in the book because I think by and large, whether you're doing a company like that or your doctor might have
Yeah.
telehealth visits,
Yeah.
And so I feel like there's some important things to know about that telehealth option. I think really what it comes down to is you're absolutely right. Sometimes it is really hard to have choice when it comes to doctors. I think certainly in the midlife transition and that menopause, you're somewhere in the menopause transition, it can be really tough to find a menopause specialist, which is something that we should all be trying to do, right? Because that's who's going to be up on the research. And if, like myself, I found a menopause specialist I wanted to see and not taking new patients, and so this
Right.
can be really
Yes.
frustrating.
Oh, that's so
And I
tough.
think my heart goes out to you. I think really when it comes to care, it's really personal. And so if you are having a good experience on one of those platforms, that's great. If you feel like you're getting the care you deserve, I will say it's important to just make sure you clue everyone in. So if you have a primary care doctor, just make sure you're having those conversations. Don't just assume that they're assuming that you're going to go elsewhere for your menopause care. You really want to make sure that someone is at the helm of your healthcare ship, right?
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. And yeah, being in charge of all of that information. And sometimes that means writing it down and sharing notes. I think we become afraid to be the squeaky wheel, and we will sit in a doctor's office and they come in and out so fast. I mean, and there are reasons for that. Like they are strapped to for insurance coverages and all of that. But I tell patients, like, write down all your questions and don't let them leave that room until you have asked all of them. Like if you tell them I have more, they will stay. But you kind of have to be that voice in that squeaky wheel. We expect so much from doctors. And I just tell people they are great when they're with you. But once they leave the room, many times they are moving on to the next person. So you need to be willing to call the nurse, call places, write things down, tell your next doctor what you've tried. Did it help? Did it not? Like you said, all of those things.
And I think it's really important for us to know that there are different types of visits. And yes, doctor's visits are getting shorter, right? For example, I just had my annual primary care physician appointment yesterday, and I came in with my notebook because I had a list of what I wanted to proactively go over, right? And the medical assistant, when she saw my notebook come out, she kind of was like, "Are these problems that you're having?" And I said, "No, these are proactive, preventative health concerns that I have that I want to talk to the doctor about when it comes to staving off disease." And she said, "Okay, you can talk about all those. But it's important to know that if you've got your annual well woman exam, that's probably not the place to bring up all of these symptoms that are causing, you can bring them up, but know that you might need a follow-up." And so when I interviewed a doctor about how do we make the most of these short visits,
Mm.
and she said one of the best things you can do is exactly what you just said. Come with your list of concerns, but then prioritize that list. So literally
Mm.
rearrange the list in terms of concerns that are most impacting your life. And then say something like this: "I understand we might not have time to cover everything that I really want to
Mm.
cover with you. Can I tell you about what's most concerning to me? Can you glance at the entire list and then let me know what we should do going forward?" And that is going to just build a bridge with your doctor. Your
Yeah.
doctor's going to be like, "Oh, you get it. I don't have 2 hours to spend with you, even though I might want to. And so
Uh-huh.
what can we cover? And then what's our plan forward?" And this doctor said to me, a lot of times we can follow up after I've seen you with telehealth. And that's going
Yeah.
to be quicker to get into, a little easier for you because you're not going to have to trek to the office. And so I think we can really help our doctors. And that's part of us being
Yes.
proactive is we can tee ourselves up to have the best
Yeah.
possible visit when we come prepared.
Yep. No, that's such a good point. So, in a perfect world, I am buying groceries regularly. I am choosing the very best ingredients. I am making snacks and meals for myself and my family. I am meal prepping. I am giving us all the macros and the important things that we need on a daily basis. That's a perfect world. In the real world, that happens as much as I can make it happen with a really busy schedule. I know you understand this. Sometimes we're running out the door in the mornings. Sometimes I can't get to the store. Sometimes the ingredients I thought that I had on hand, I am missing. Sometimes we are rushing around at night between soccer practices and musical performances, and I just can't get that warm meal on the table. In those situations, Factor meals can come in to help. So, Factor meals are delivered straight to your doorstep, fresh and never frozen. They take only a few minutes of preparation straight into the microwave, and then you have a well balanced meal at the table for yourself and other people in your family or people that you love. And you have so many options to choose from. They have keto friendly, they have high protein, they have vegetarian meals. And some of my favorite options recently include protein shakes and energy bars, those things that we go through a lot with our kids when we're heading to sporting events. So I'm so thankful to have an option that I can feel good about even when we're busy and I can't get my own home cooked meal on the table. You can head to factormeals.com
ollyfarm.com/meetyourbody50off and use code meetyourbody50off to get 50% off and free daily greens per box with new subscriptions only while supplies last until September 27th, 2026. You can see the website for more details. Again, that's factormeals.com/meetyourbody50off and use code meetyourbody50off.
Good sleep is everything. That's why Ollie's Science Back Support is made with a blend of melatonin and L-theanine for both kiddos and grown-ups. So when your mind won't switch off, you've got something that can help. Your racing thoughts and restless nights won't stand a chance. Find Ollie Sleep Solutions for the whole family at ollie.com. That's OLLY.com.
Now back to our show.
And you mention in the introduction that you write in this book that you had kind of a personal experience about going to see some doctors and not getting answers that you were looking for and having to find different doctors. Do you have, please tell the story if you would like to, and I would love then to kind of know if there's either red flags that you kind of know about or have heard from the people you interviewed or anything that would tell us, you know what, I've done everything I feel like I can do on my side. I think it is time to try to find someone else to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think when I look back at my own symptoms, so I am an open book about my symptoms because I feel like if I can help other women, like ask me all the questions. So I had very heavy periods when I was in my late 30s, early 40s. And it was during a time when we all started collectively talking more about perimenopause and how periods can get wonky and a lot heavier during that transition. And so I just ignored my own symptoms and thought, I'm probably in perimenopause. And I didn't really bring them up, you know? And when I did bring them up, it was sort of just like, yeah, maybe perimenopause and okay. But I really think it went two ways. I want to take some ownership here because I think that if I was more detailed with what I was going through, if I had a better education about what a normal menstrual cycle should look like, I could have been more detailed. So that's the other piece here. But then finally I said, this is heavy, you know, and I was very like always kind of just over the border or under the border of being anemic. And so I was like, I think I'm bleeding too much. And sure enough, I was diagnosed with uterine fibroids, which are benign growths, thankfully, but they were every type they could be and every place they could be in my uterus. And my uterus was full of fibroids. And so looking back, I wonder, had I been able to, you know, bring more specific symptoms to my doctors. And if my doctors were more able to kind of ask the right questions to help me get to a diagnosis faster, I wonder if I would have been eligible or not eligible, but I wonder if I would have had more treatment options available to me. By the time we found my fibroids, hysterectomy was my option. And so I did have a hysterectomy. And I will say I interviewed multiple surgeons. I was lucky that I had some choice, but I did feel like it was important to pay those copays to make sure I had a surgeon who I really thought was the exact right surgeon I wanted to do this pretty big procedure on me.
Yeah.
And so I think throughout the course, it's just so important to listen to our gut. I think our guts tell us, our intuition tells us a lot about whether or not we are with the right doctor. I think if you're getting the brush off, if you feel totally rushed, or on the flip side, if you feel totally pushed into a certain type of treatment, like to be honest with you, I met with one surgeon where she was talking to me about the procedure and I had a lot of questions still and she was sort of rushed for time. And then she said, okay, should we get that scheduled? Should we schedule your surgery today? And I was like, okay, you're not my person, you know, like I just, and so I think it's really, really important to stay clued in. And I think our intuition will tell us a lot about when it's time to move on from a doctor or not.
Yeah.
And hopefully you have choice if your all signs do point towards, I need a new doctor.
Yeah. And I think so much of this, I remind myself of this and I tell other women I work with, it really does take work. Like, I think we want it to be easy. I mean, I do. I want to just call one person and have them answer everything, prescribe what I need. But it really does take work. It takes time. And like you said, sometimes it can take money, unfortunately. I mean, that's a whole other, you need to write a whole other book about that, please.
I know.
Our healthcare system. But it really just does and it can feel like a full-time job sometimes. But I feel like if you take that time to find, like you said, a few trusted sources that you have, that can make it worth it on the back end. Because I have found, and again, I'll just go back to my oncologist because she's great. And I had asked her recently in my last visit about HRT and if that was an option for me. Because with a history of breast cancer, who knows, right? Like, but I want to have this discussion. And she was very open and said, these are some options you have. We are not going to tell you which one is right for you. Like, we're not comfortable doing that, but we are comfortable with you exploring that route. And we would love for you to come back to us once you've met with another professional. And so in some doctors, that might have felt like a brush off, right? That they were kind of like, well, we're not going to tell you what to do, but good luck. But it didn't with them because I had a history with them. They had already proven themselves to me, this doctor's office, and with all the verbiage, with my surgery, with everything they had done for me, I had that trusted foundation. So then this discussion kind of built on that. And so I think doing that work on the front end, while it can feel like a lot of work, it really can make things on the back end when you're pursuing more health goals or health options, it can make it easier because you've developed that trusted relationship already.
Absolutely. Something you said prompted it was sort of surprising when I tucked into some of the research on medical gaslighting. So that's when women just feel like, just totally not seen, not heard, or that our symptoms are actually downplayed. I interviewed a Denver-based researcher who has really studied this, and she said something fascinating, which is that a lot of times medical gaslighting isn't as nefarious as it might feel. So it's actually just the doctors are overloaded. They're stressed. There's a lot of cognitive load. And when there's a lot of cognitive load for them, they can rush through. They can make you feel sort of, if they don't know what the answer is, they might just be like, I don't have an answer. Sorry. And you might feel the brush off, but it's not actually coming from a bad place. And that's not to say it's going to make it feel any easier. That feels terrible, right? But I think to your point of like, okay, if we can keep this in mind, if we can understand that your oncologist is not going to be able to tell you a surefire cure all the time, right? And that's a bummer. But it also is like, if you have your eyes wide open to that, you can say, okay, now I've got to do my homework. I've got to listen to my gut and my intuition to help guide my path forward.
Right. And do they give you options versus just saying, I don't know, bye,
Totally.
right? Like it's such a different feeling when you're listened to, when you're validated, when they say, I hear what you're saying and your symptoms are real. We have various options for that. I don't know the best one. Let me send you here. Or I'm going to give you some options because that's not our specialty here. Or let me do more research. Like that feels so different as a patient as opposed to just the quick, okay, they didn't even hear what I said and they left the room.
100% agree.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. And one thing too, I probably already brought this up, but I really love about this book is you said at the beginning that it's kind of about women's lifespans. And yeah, you and I are right in this late 40s kind of phase. So I feel like my brain is very much in where it is with perimenopause and HRT and how everything's changing and learning that. But I also have a 12-year-old daughter who's very much in, like, she's in puberty. I'm in reverse puberty. We are here at the same time. Opening this book, one of the most delightful surprises to me was the entire first few chapters. You talk about health for girls and how we can talk to the girls in our lives about their health. Like you talk about their language to use. You talk about what might be important to them. You talk about sexual health with them. And I just want to say how important that is. Like as a mom going through it, I love that I can bring that to her and say, hey, we can go through this together. But I would also love to hear kind of what made you want to include that piece because it's really not included in most of the health books out there.
Yeah, well, my book is dedicated to my nieces. And I don't have kids of my own, but the puberty chapter, I felt was really important because puberty has changed. We're talking a lot about how puberty is really different for our girls today than it was when we went through it. And so I said, okay, well, what has changed? Let's talk about these things. And so that's why that chapter is there. And it really was a love letter to my sister and my sister-in-law's, my niece, Sydney is in grad school now. So she's well past puberty, but that chapter really was like, gosh, what does my sister need to know as she navigates these years with her daughters? And really, what is my 12-year-old niece? What can she learn if she picked up my book and said, I'm going to read this section because I'm in it, And so it felt really, really important to me and I learned a lot. Like, I mean, I don't know about you, but I did not get a great education about my body when I was 11, 12, 13. And I was, God bless my mom who did her best, but she was given even less than what she gave
Yeah.
me.
No, we didn't
So,
talk about it, right? Like that was it. We didn't talk about
no.
it and then you hit it after
And
that.
then you hit it. We grew up in the era where we were like hiding tampons up our shirt sleeves. Like God forbid we talk about having a period and so, I think really my big hope is that if you do have a young girl, you can read these chapters and just orient yourself around what has changed, right? Puberty. What I learned from Dr. Kara Natterson, who's a wonderful puberty expert and pediatrician, is that, puberty, the on-ramp to puberty is a little bit longer now. And so these kids, when they're going through these hormonal shifts, like we're going through hormonal shifts in perimenopause, and we know that it's perimenopause. These kids don't really know what it is. They just think like I feel different and I don't know why, and that's really disorienting, right?
Yes.
And the more we can help them give words to that, the more we can help them understand their anatomy. This is really huge. And not to mention, there's a whole section on how do we talk to our kids these days about sex because, wow, things have changed. Kids come across porn. And I think having our eyes wide open to that is really important, right? And how do we talk about these things so that we can help, especially our girls, understand sex and, in ways that hold space for all the things, right? The
Yes.
pleasure in addition to the conversations about staying safe. I
Yes.
interviewed Peggy Ornstein for the book, who's a brilliant journalist who has written amazing books called Girls and Sex and Boys and Sex. And she has really tucked into the differences. And wow, something that really surprised me is that still to this day, young girls, when you have the conversation about sex, it's all about pleasing others. It's not about
Mm,
pleasure for
self-pleasure.
ourselves, right? And I think that's something to note as we talk to our young girls about this topic.
Yeah. And that's why too, it really does come back to, like you said, owning your health, owning your body, trying to create a relationship with your body, because whether we know it or not, if we can't do that for ourselves, then we're not exempling that for our daughters. Like that's something I'm aware of every day, that if I can't own this for myself, then she is already set back because she needs an example of a woman who knows how to use the language, advocate for themselves, have a relationship with their bodies. And the language piece I love too. I mean, studies show us that girls who just have language around their body, the correct anatomical terms, the correct terms for sex, they are actually less likely to be the victim of sexual assault if they have the correct language around it. So just know that these conversations are more than just sex on the outside. They are truly teaching our girls to own their bodies, be safer in the world, and be advocates for themselves, and then pass that on to their friends and other women in their life too later on.
Absolutely. And it is on us to not only educate ourselves, but to also help educate our young girls, because unfortunately, in a lot of the country, we haven't made that much progress when it comes to educating our youngsters on sex. It really does tend to focus on like wear a condom and prevent sexually transmitted diseases, right? There's not really great anatomy lessons. And, I mean, this is a tragedy. We live in these bodies. We're told to take care of these bodies and own our health, right? But like that's really hard to do when we don't know our various parts and where they are and what they're called. And so I think even just a baseline knowledge can really help us advocate for ourselves and talk about things and notice the red flags when they come up via symptoms, and then model that for our daughters.
Yes, absolutely. If you could, and I know this is going to be a hard question because I'm going down deep.
Go there.
If you could pull like a couple lessons that really you remember specifically from your research over a couple years, or just, a couple stories or experts that really stand out to you, I would love to hear that.
I love this question because I'm a service journalist. So what I always try to do with anything I write is give people actionable steps. Like, what can you do right now? So here are a few things that I know changed the course of my health. So let's talk about breast cancer. First and foremost, I interviewed Dr. Lisa Larkin, who is a breast cancer survivor herself and a women's health specialist. And she said most of when we turn 40, we get our annual mammogram and we think we're on it when it comes to breast cancer prevention. A mammogram is an amazing screening tool, but it is not breast cancer prevention. And what most of our doctors are not talking to us about is our lifetime risk of breast cancer. And so, if you have never done one of the calculators to calculate your lifetime risk of breast cancer, like the Tyrer-Cuzick model is a great one to start with, you can do that right now. Press pause, find out your lifetime risk of breast cancer, and then have a conversation with your gynecologist or your primary care physician about what that means for your screening plan. So, Dr. Larkin told me this, and I was like, how is it that I go to my primary care physician every year. I go to my gynecologist every year. I usually space them about 6 months apart, just so I'm getting like 2 breast exams and having 2 touch points with a doctor. And not once, I was 45 years old when I learned this, not once has someone told me what my lifetime risk of breast cancer is. P.S.
I've never heard of that, and I've had breast cancer.
Okay. So this is, I'm so passionate about this. So
So is
P.S.
that a link I can put below?
Yes, you
Okay.
can put the
All
link
right.
below. Everyone literally press pause and do this, and then tell your mom to do it, and your sisters, and your daughters if they're a certain age. So really what that did for me is I was just under anything over 20% is considered a high lifetime risk of breast cancer. I was just under that, but I have extremely dense breast tissue. So for those of you who don't know, and it is in my breast health chapter, which I'm really proud of that chapter, there are 4 different categories of breast density. A, B, C, and D. So D is extremely dense. That's what I fall into. And so by bringing that score to my gynecologist, he said, well, this isn't a low lifetime risk, even though you're not above 20%. And the fact that you've got extremely dense breast tissue, we're going to order you a breast MRI. And I just had my first breast MRI. So this is something I felt really like empowered, like, wow, it's a bummer that I had to be the one to be proactive about this, but fantastic that I was, because I love my gynecologist and it created this great conversation. I think another thing women can do is really think about our heart health and our
Mhm.
brain health right now in midlife. When it comes to brain health, what most of us, too many of us still don't realize is that Alzheimer's disease massively disproportionately impacts us as women.
Yes.
We are 2/3 the cases of Alzheimer's disease. And what we know is that Alzheimer's is a disease that starts in midlife. Symptoms don't show up until later, but the seeds are being planted now for that. And so knowing that means like we've got to be proactive. We've got to talk to our doctors, certainly if there's any neurodegenerative diseases in our family history, but even if there's not, I just had a primary care physician visit and I talked to her about my brain health, what I'm trying to do proactively, if there's anything else I can add into that. The good news on the brain is that a lot of these lifestyle habits that help us feel healthy really keep our brains healthy too. Exercise is hugely important, getting enough sleep, eating a healthy diet, community, socializing, really, really important for our brain health. So those are a few things. But yeah, and also, the pregnancy complications and the history of hot flashes in menopause really did surprise me when it comes to potential for heart health later on. And that's something that's like, okay, like let's bring that up with our doctors. So those are a couple things, and I think finally something that surprised me when I finished the menopause chapter, I turned it in to my editors and they were like, Megan, this is kind of doom and gloom. Like you're talking about all these symptoms and I know it's important to talk about, but gosh, like, is there anything good? And it sent me beautifully down this new reporting route where I talked to doctors and they were like, yeah, there's a lot of great stuff about menopause, and it is really important to give voice to that so that we're not just going into our 50s and beyond thinking like, it's all downhill from here. No way. It's like not only do we have no more periods, we don't have to worry about birth control. So those are just some of the top line bonuses, right? But also like, I think as women in midlife, we're stepping into this new version of ourselves. We have this opportunity to really reset, to literally pause and take stock and say, okay, what's working in my life? What's not working in my life? What do I want to change? What can I change to double down on some of these healthy habits that are going to prevent disease later on, And so I think that's super hopeful to me.
Yeah. And I mean, that's a perfect way to kind of wrap up what the message is here, right? Like continue to advocate for yourself. continue to be a partner. You kind of have to be an active participant in your health. And I think that I love that message that's finally coming out in the last 5 years. And I know it can also feel exhausting. I mean, we're doing 100 other things. Like the last thing that I want to do is also have to work for my health. But it is the one thing that will be the foundation I need to be able to do all the other things on my to-do list, right? Like that is what we need moving forward. And I feel like this book, like again, it just offers that. And I don't want to say easy because I'm not trying to make this easy, but it feels like it's doable. It's like an invitation to say, you know what? You can take this one step at a time. Like if this is where you are, if you're in, like you said, that like in your mid-30s and you're wondering about fertility, let's talk about it. If you are needing your first mammogram and you're a little nervous about what that means, let's talk about it. Having that in bite-sized pieces and knowing it comes from experts, like I really appreciate that, but that it also comes from a place of women supporting other women. It just feels like a breath of, like I can take a deep breath and say, oh, I can do this. Okay, I can do this.
That's a super high compliment. And yeah, tuck in and tuck out of this book when things come up. Like let's say you feel a lump and you've heard, you're freaking out about breast cancer, understandably so. But there's a lot of other things that a lump can be. And so maybe take a read so that when you go to that visit, you can say, look, I feel a lump. I know it could be a cyst or something else, but can we talk about this? I think what happens then is when we're informed, not only do we feel more empowered, but we feel more confident when we're in those appointments, right? We can say like, gosh, I wonder what all my symptoms are doing. We feel more confident when we talk about those symptoms, and then we can actually say to the doctor, do you think it could be an autoimmune disease? I know it can take women years to get a diagnosis. Can we talk about this, And then also, I had someone say that this book is great for your bookshelf, right? But it could also be a coffee table book. Don't you want the men in your life to take a look at this book and say, what is this? And I will say personally, the breast health chapter I gave to my husband so that he could read it before, my mammograms usually end up in follow-ups for some, and that's okay, but it always freaks me out, even though I have the information. It's very nerve-wracking, right? And so the more, he's my person. And so when he knows about the landscape, he can help support me. And I think that's really important as well, again, that community piece, like lean on everybody. And really, you brought it up before, and I think for women, gosh, we hold the world on our shoulders, right? Everybody comes to us for the answers, whether it's where we're going on vacation or where the socks are, And it's like, it can just be so tiring and have it feel like the last thing you've got time to do is make your appointment for your skin cancer check or that colonoscopy that you've been putting off because the prep is going to be a little annoying. And it's like, no. Okay, now is the time. You pick up the phone after we get off and you call to set the appointment because we have to prioritize us as well.
Yeah. Tell everyone where they can find you and where they can find your book.
Yeah, so you can find the book anywhere where books are sold. You can find a little bit more about me as well as click the link to buy the book at newrulesofwomenshealth.com.
Awesome. And we will have the links to all of that below. And again, guys, it's called The New Rules of Women's Health. I am so glad to have you here. Thank you for this message. Thank you to Maria Shriver, who called you out to write this book for us. We are grateful. And thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I love chatting with you.
Talk to you soon.
Thanks so much for listening today. I would love it if you could take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. It means a lot to us and it helps our content get out to more women who need it. You can find more of my resources at my website, jessicavalant.com, or find me on YouTube at Jessica Valant and Instagram at Jessica S. Valant.